Now, Ana Sofia Pelaez is the co-founder of the Miami Freedom Project. She told me the new law is aimed at terrorizing immigrants, and she's specifically calling out Republican Cuban-American lawmakers, who she says have turned their backs on their own immigrant backgrounds.
Ana Sofia, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The reason I wanted to have you on the show is because of something you said during a news conference outside the Freedom Tower after the governor signed the new immigration bill that goes into effect in Florida July 1st. And you said that Cuban-American Republicans in Tallahassee who voted in favor of this new law should be ashamed of themselves. And that got my attention. Let me ask you why you said that.
I think immigration reform, wherever Cuban Americans have landed on the political spectrum, has always been something that we've been able to come together around. It's always been a bipartisan issue. You didn't have to look for a party affiliation. You only had to look for the last name to know that there was a likelihood that they were going to be in support of immigrant rights, immigrant reform. Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, I think, is the example that we all look to. And there was a grace in that. There was a recognition that we had been through a very difficult situation, and that the benefits that were afforded to us through the immigration policy that was very specific to Cubans through the Cuban Adjustment Act had given us an opportunity that we had taken every advantage of through work and heartbreak, but that we were unique in that, and that our work, our responsibility because of that was to extend that help for others, to be that voice for other immigrant communities. And in recent years, we've seen some, not all, in our community pull away from that. And I think it's a real loss. I think it's a loss for ourselves, for our own identity, for an understanding of our own history and the value of that story, but then also for the larger immigrant rights movement. Because we are that proof of concept. We are that proof that shows if you give people what they need, not only to come to a country, but to settle and to access the support they need to thrive in it and to really contribute and to begin to be part of the country that they have sought refuge in, that there's an infinite reward that you receive from it, and that the proof of that was Miami. And we have to be always ready to extend and to be that voice that extends that help to others.
Well, did you make an effort to take that message to Cuban American lawmakers in Tallahassee?
That effort was made. Those weren't conversations that I was a part of. I think it was part of a larger advocacy effort that I was involved in and had that awareness of. And those conversations were had. I can't speak to why they made those decisions. I can speak to what their vote was. And that's the record we have. It wasn't uniform. There was some crossing of party lines. I think we had a representative, Vicky Lopez, who made that choice. There were other Latinos who spoke out against this immigration bill nationally. It's an important issue. There's not one way to respond to it, but I think in having so many Cuban American elected leaders who did vote in favor of it in the end, I think is really shows that we've moved away from a position that we should have, a space that we should have never left, that we need to remain committed to.
You're saying that these lawmakers voted in favor of this bill, which has been called draconian and mean-spirited by immigration advocates like yourself, have forgotten their roots, forgot that maybe they didn't come from another country, but their parents, their ancestors certainly did.
I think I was born and raised in this country, and I think part of our understanding of where our families come from is that story. And we're all raised on those stories of what I came with, who and what I encountered, who helped me. And as a child, you always want to identify with the person who did help them process paperwork, who did indicate a job that they could have that could kind of start getting them back to recovery, back to, it was able to kind of access the ground underneath them after having a cataclysmic experience of having to leave their country. You wanted to be that person. You felt the responsibility to be that person for others. And I think to not be that person, to not only not help, but to harm in some way, to put those limitations on people who are just coming out of a difficult, disastrous, cataclysmic situation that should resonate with us and with our own personal histories, and to put these limitations on them and to mischaracterize them in some way, because so many of these measures that we've seen passed are arbitrary. there doesn't seem to be a through line or sense. It's really miscasting an immigrant who, just by his own presence here, by their own presence here, and not being documented, being in some way criminal.
How much of this law do you think is political theater? How much of it do you think is a governor who has his sights set on a presidential race and a campaign and saying, look at me, I'm tough on immigration. And we do have an immigration crisis right now at the southern border. I think both parties would admit to that. So how much of this is real and how much of this is political theater?
I can't speak to the governor's motivations, but when you see these laws passed that aren't a true reflection of who we are, what we've been able to accomplish, I think most people would look at South Florida, would look at the immigrant communities that have come here as a success story. And many of them are supporters of the governor. And I don't believe that this represents their interest. I don't think it represents our business interest. I don't think it represents our sense of, as a whole community that is trying to move through this crisis. We have seen an elevated number of Cubans and Venezuelans and Nicaraguans who are coming to South Florida. They want to be with their families. They want to be with their community. They want to be able to immediately engage with a culture that is in some way recognizable to them, whatever loss they may have just experienced. They're not going to stop coming here. And many of the people, the families, the friends who are receiving them, they are citizens. They are people who have established residencies. They are business owners. They are our teachers. They are our doctors. They're the ones who are being asked to in some way live apart and in some way not be fully committed to and able to help their family, their friends access the resources that they receive and that they need to extend to the people that they feel responsible for.
The bottom line here is that the system, the immigration system, is broken, and there seems to be no political will to fix it. Do you think that you see any evidence of that changing?
I think when we think about immigration as being politicized in this way, there is that need is there. That at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about who's your governor, what state you're in. Are you in a red state or are you in a blue state? It should be about having a pathway to citizenship. It should be about having a humane process for welcoming people into this country and having the authority to embody that process from the very beginning. If someone has an asylum case to make, they should be able to make it. And if someone is through that process and is ready to settle in a community, then they should be welcomed.